Hi guys, it's me, Ginger, from Exclusive ARC, and I promised my Redditor friends that I would do a little bit of data porn and tell you about the books that I featured on Freebie Friday last Friday and how they performed and what we might be able to learn from that. So, as you might know, every Friday I send out a newsletter to my 8,200 and growing subscribers called Freebie Friday. And what happens is people who I work with in the erotic authors group and my other writing groups reach out to me and say, hey, I'm running my book free on the Friday, possibly the Saturday, possibly the Sunday, will you feature it? And so I'll put the cover image, the name of the book, and a direct link to the book's page on Amazon, and then I will send out an email on Friday. On Saturday, I'll check that the book is still free. If it is still free, I will send out another email to everyone who didn't click on that first email on Friday. So I try not to spam people who've already clicked. And finally, on Sunday, I'll send out another email to the people who didn't click on Friday or Saturday. So it's kind of a three-hitter. And generally, as you can imagine, on the Friday you get the bulk of the downloads. On the Saturday you get a few stragglers, and on Sunday you get like just a few clicks. So I'm going to look at the data specifically from Friday, September 22nd. I have asked the authors who submitted their books to Freebie Friday whether they're okay with me talking about them. Some said yes, some said no, so I'm only going to talk about the ones that the authors said they're okay about it. And we will have a chat and see what information we can glean from that. So I'm going to go and nip over to my computer now. Bear with me, and I'll speak to you soon. So, right. The things I learned from this, you can see a snapshot of the email that went out here, and obviously the books carried on down there. So the things I learned from this that I found interesting was, the first thing is that placement doesn't really matter. I would have thought from all my years in digital advertising that the top performing books would have been the ones at the top here. And it turns out that is not true. That it didn't really matter where the books were in the lineup. People picked them for the cover and for what they were rather than where they were placed. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I actually offer a sort of an enhanced thing where people can be on the top row, and you know, I don't know. I think it definitely does make your book more visible, but I don't know if it necessarily indicates that you've got any more downloads. The second thing that I definitely found out from going through all this data was that genre matters. So out of all the books that got downloaded, you could tell definitely the full-length romance books were the most successful. Sort of full-length erotic books were kind of the second one, and when it came to it, the least best performing ones tended to be sort of the short form erotica, the niche erotica. So it's interesting. And bad boy books clearly did best of all. And I'll go into some of the specifics of that. But I thought that was fairly predictable, but it's nice to see that validated by the data. I don't think that necessarily means, and this is my third point, that you should immediately abandon whatever genre you write in and you should start writing bad boy books, because I think while the best performing romance books are always going to be the Manchester bad boy books, it is a much more competitive field to be in. And I think the best performing books are always going to be barnstormers, and the best performing bad boy romance books are going to be sort of the ones that end up being in the New York bestseller list and stuff like that. But it's very difficult when you're in such a competitive field to be that high performing number one, and I think it means you have a lot more risk of your full-length book ending up sort of disappearing amongst all of the other competition and not being seen. If you write in another niche like paranormal romance, you will generally find, okay, your books will never be those like massive bestsellers, but you are more likely to be a consistently well-selling book. So I think that there's definitely something to be said for sticking to the niche that you're in, even if it's not bad boy romance erotica. And I would also say, as a writer, if you don't want to burn yourself out, you should always stick in whatever genre that you actually enjoy writing in. And you know, if people enjoy writing in paranormal romance, I think that's an awesome thing to stick to. And hey, it's worth pointing out that, you know, Twilight and all of that is technically paranormal romance, and those are some of the best-selling books, romance books of all time. So stick at what you like writing, and that's the most important thing. Fourth thing I learned is that romance beats erotica, but erotica still does well. So it's unsurprising that romance books were definitely the most clicked on. I was surprised how well clicked pure erotica was as well. Well, I'm not necessarily surprised. I'll notice every week I send out advanced reading copies of books to my readers. And I know for a fact that when I have like a bad boy romance book going, that it's going to get a lot of people interested in downloading it and reviewing it. But even the erotica, especially like the naughty stuff like stepdaddies and things like that, tend to do fairly nicely. And I think really that everybody's a secret pervert. And once you've got the anonymity of like downloading a book that no one knows about onto your Kindle, so nobody knows what you're reading, people kind of like to indulge themselves. So again, just like I said, romance writers shouldn't abandon whatever genre they're in and move to bad boy romance. If you write erotica, you shouldn't give it up necessarily and feel pressured to go and write romance. I think there's definitely going to be always going to be a market for erotica, and I think you can do very nicely for yourself in that. The final thing is extreme niches always tend to be the lowest performers. That's something that I will validate with some data later on. Again, I don't necessarily think that means that you should shy away from writing niche erotica. In fact, quite the opposite. I've noticed working with people that sometimes they have some specific niche that they're really into. I don't know whether it's adult baby diaper lover or cuckold or sissy or something like that. Okay, their books might never be the like #1 bestsellers, but they will sell consistently well. And once you have built up kind of like a name for yourself as somebody who writes in that particular genre, you'll find you have an audience of people who will buy every single book you publish in that genre. So it's a very manageable and sustainable model to find a niche that you enjoy writing in and consistently write stories in that niche, because they will consistently be bought by the people who are into that niche. So there we go. That's what I've learned here. Let's move on to how did I measure success with this? So I didn't want, I mean, I reached out to all of the authors that I'm going to talk about, and they gave me permission to talk about their books. I didn't want to give too much information away, so I didn't want to actually talk about the exact number of clicks each of them got. I mean, for a number of reasons. Clicks, put here, remember, clicks don't translate to downloads. So a book might have got 200 clicks. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get 200 downloads. But also, you know, I don't want to give too much information away. So what I did to compare this in a way that you guys can understand is I added up all of the clicks that we had, all of the unique clicks, and then I divided it by the number of books we had and worked out what the means average was. And so there are some books that sort of set the bar at what the average performing book was. And I'm going to talk about the 3 books that most outperformed that, and the 3 books that most underperformed in that. And I think we can get some information and take it away there. So, right on the money, setting the bar for performance with these books. There are 3 books that that basically hit the nail on the head, and these were the sort of the average number of downloads, which don't let the word average make you think that that's bad or that's criticism. These books did really, really nicely. And I will say that sending out Freebie Friday, I don't charge anybody any money for it, but if I did and I got, it would be great to be able to say, well, if you use Freebie Friday, you are generally going to get this number of downloads. First book was Dominant Surrender by Emma Haven. She hit exactly on the average number of downloads. I like this book a lot. So this is an erotica romance book. It's full length. It's got the alpha male. I like the cover because it's kind of classy with the black and white and the red lips. And the red lips are mirrored by the little red subheading there. It's very nicely done, Emma. Next book was Hollywood Nights #1 Red Carpet Affair by Amelie Black. I actually have worked with Amelie through exclusive ARC. I really like her stuff. More than that, I've actually read this book and I really enjoyed it. Amelie's thing is she will write books that are in the kind of mold of like Jackie Collins. I don't know if anyone remembers Jackie Collins. For me, that's huge, because the whole reason that I'm in this industry, a lot of people are surprised that there's a guy who's so into like the romance book thing. It's because my formative years and probably my sexuality was formed by reading Jackie Collins books under the covers that I'd stolen from my mother's room. So I love Jackie Collins, love all of this stuff, and Amelie just does a fantastic job. She takes everything I love about Jackie Collins and then just like turns up the temperature by 100 degrees. So fantastic job.
it's really no surprise that like she's setting a bar for the number of downloads that happen. Well, sorry, the number of clicks that happen with Freebie Friday. The final book is The Virgin's Vow by Zia Blaze. I'm not sure quite how to pronounce that. This again, bang on the money, setting the bar for the number of downloads. I will say that based on my preconceptions, before I looked at the data, I would not necessarily have thought that this would have done as nicely as it did, because we've got lots of grr, man chest, sexy bad boy books. This looks a lot more wholesome. You've got very much the old school romance thing of like the handsome bronzed dude with the big biceps and the curly tousled hair, and the innocent looking girl in her white top with her beautiful blonde hair. The Virgin's Vow, it's an erotic Regency romance novella. So I would not necessarily have thought that this would have done as consistently as it did, but it did, and I think you have to hand it to Xia. I'm so sorry that I can't pronounce your name right. I think you managed to hit all the beats really, really nicely here. As I said, it's got like that classic romance novel cover from the romance books that my mother used to pick up from the airport, had kind of covers like this. The Virgin's Vow is really interesting again. Virgins are super. They've always been a super hot topic on Amazon, but they're super big right now. So you've got that in there. The Regency romance novella, it looks kind of classy. So there are a lot of reasons why this one works. I would not have predicted it to work as well as it did. And that just shows you that, first of all, maybe you should listen to me with my advice. But I think, secondly, that it's very important to go through and actually look at the data, because the data will often tell you stuff that you might not have anticipated. So really good job there. Okay, next we're going to talk about the best performing books. So these are the 3 books that performed best of all out of all of them. So again, I'm measuring the number of unique clicks we got on the Freebie Friday. The first one was Hunter Perfect Revenge by Alice May Ball. I don't think there's any surprise why this book did the best out of all of them. It got 176%, which means it got 76% more clicks than average. It's really solid. It's a bad boy romance book. You know those are always going to perform well. You got a great cover here. Look at that guy. He is jacked. And all those tattoos. Jacked guys with tattoos always sell consistently well. The name Hunter, like single word titles for bad boy romances are really hot right now. So I think everything about this is just a really solid bad boy romance, and that's why it did best of everyone. I would have said, again, going back to before I looked at the data, I would not necessarily have thought that. I thought this cover was a bit too purpley, and I thought bad boy romances generally did better with sort of some understated covers. Again, just shows what I know. I mean, this is bright. This is like, you're going to take notice of this cover, even amongst all of the other books. So I think that's something you can take away here. Anyway, so no surprise that this book did best of all. Alice May Ball, you did a fantastic job. Very well deserved. Next book was a bundle, a 3-book bundle, Broken, Bruiser, and Baller, an Alpha Bad Boy MMA romance bundle by Simone Scarlett MMA. Again, this is why Hunter was successful. You've got like big man chest there, huge biceps, tattoo, abs, a bad boy book bundle about MMA fighters. Those are always really successful and do really consistently well. So I don't think it's any surprise that this box set performed really well. How well? Well, it got 51% more clicks than the average. So you know, it is what it is. I think it has the advantage as well of being a bundle, because if you download a bundle, you get 3 books for one, so you get more for your buck. Especially when we're talking about these free books, free downloads, people aren't even spending a buck, so they want to get more for their not buck. And here we go. The third best performer was Freed by Lila Kane. Once again, based on my preconceptions of things, I would not necessarily have thought that this would have done as well as it did, which is no reflection on Lila at all. It's just because it doesn't have a bare-chested guy on the cover. I think there is a lot you could take away from this. Again, I've worked with Lila through exclusive ARC. She's a fantastic writer. And I think there are two reasons why this book did so well. And when I say did well, got 42% higher than average clicks. The two reasons are, first of all, that Lila just hit the concept of the book perfectly. It's a really, really compelling concept of the book. And secondly, one thing you got to remember is that, you know, we're sending this out to my 8,200 subscribers for exclusive ARC, many of whom have read other stuff that Lila has written. And so they already know that any book by Lila is going to be a good book because she's already delivered a real barnstormer of a book. So I think that's it. I think it's interesting. You don't necessarily need to go to the whole bear tattooed man chest cover if you've got a good reputation. And Lila's reputation came before her, and that's why her book was downloaded so much. She did a really good job with the blurb, and she did a really good job just engaging those readers and getting them interested in her books. So there we go. Those are the three best performers. There's a lot we can take away from that. But let's move on to the poorest performers. These books were the least clicked on. And don't let me make you think that I'm criticizing any of these books, because the nice thing about Freebie Friday is it doesn't cost anything to take part in it. And you know, in that case, if you're not paying for anything, any downloads is good. These books did really well. I mean, they just, you know, they had dozens and dozens of downloads. It didn't necessarily mean that they performed poorly. They just didn't perform very well compared to the top performers. The first book was Simone Scarlett, Cuckold Wife Compilation. 3 Tales of Unprotected Interracial Infidelity. This is very much a niche erotica in the mold of the cuckold niche. So as I said in that first page, you know, niche erotica always does the most poorly out of all of the things. Not necessarily because it's bad, but because, you know, if people are going to download books, and my audience that I built up through exclusive ARC, they like full-length fiction, they like bad boy romance, they like romance books. So this, which is, you know, smut basically, isn't going to perform as well compared to like the Guru, Manchester, bad boy romance books. Still got a good number of downloads. I like everything about this. Simone Scarlett, the name will be familiar because she got the second highest rated book as well, which was that Bad Boy MMA romance bundle. Simone's kind of got two sides to her. She has one brand, which is very consistently branded like this, where she markets like cuckold erotica. And then she's got the other brand, which is the one she publishes MMA books with, which is kind of like more legit. So it's interesting to see her. It's like the end of that first Herbie movie. She's come both first and last. Well, second and last. Anyway, interesting idea. The one other thing I wanted to talk to you about this. Oh yeah, sorry. Let me give you some facts. This got 57% fewer clicks than average. So as I said, you know, it's still, at the end of the day, it still did nicely. It still got dozens of clicks. It just did less than average by 57%. What I found interesting is there was another cuckold erotica book, cuckold erotica short, in the mix for Freebie Friday this week. Here we go. Shannon's Bull Used in Front of My Husband. This did very nicely. This was slightly below average. So got 8% below average number of clicks. But as you can see, that's significantly better performing than Simone's book. And Simone's book was also the second row, so it was more visible. I was surprised. Going back to what my preconceptions would have been before I looked at the data, I wouldn't have thought that this book would have done as nicely. Because no disrespect to Alexis at all, but the covers, you can tell that you didn't sort of pay somebody to make this cover for you. It's got stock photo footage of a big black guy in the background, and I know that dude because I've used him for book covers in the past, and that's it. And she's got her name at the top, which is great, although because it's all in black, it kind of blends in with the thing here. And then you've got the down at the bottom, Shannon's Bull, which kind of like looks superimposed over it, and you've got this weird orange shadow to the words here. So off the top of my head, I would say that I would have thought that Simone's stuff would have done better than this. It didn't. And I think the reason for that is, okay, the cover might not look super, super professional, but if you actually click through to the product page, Alexis has put a really, really nice description together, and it's very much, you know, pure play cuckold erotica, which, as I said before, people love their niches. So there would be people and they would just go nuts for this particular niche. And I think that's really well done and really nicely played, Alexis. Talking about Simone, the next poorest performing book was one of hers as well. Like, she's all over the place today. 43% fewer clicks than the average, which, you know, again, I'm not criticizing Simone at all. It still meant she got dozens of downloads, well, dozens of clicks. I don't know about the number of downloads she got, but it's interesting to compare it to this book, to the highest performing books. This is called Reality's Fucked, a she-male succubus, horny clones, and a talking cat. I will say I think the reason this book didn't perform as well as the other books is just because it's out there. I mean, you know, her other book was a cuckold bundle. Cuckold niche erotica is very much a thing. Reality's Fucked, a she-male succubus, horny clones, and a talking cat. What is this book even about? So that's interesting. I think that's one of the reasons why it didn't perform so well, is because it's difficult to pigeonhole what this particular book is about, and people are going to be like, well, you know, I'm going to download all of this other stuff to read, and I'm fairly certain that it's about stuff I think is sexy. And then you've got this as an option, and you're like, well, I don't really know. So that's interesting. I think I always say that you should write what interests you and what you're passionate about, but sometimes you have to temper that with a bit of common sense and write about what you think people will actually buy. So I think Simone made a bold move here. As I said, she still got dozens of clicks, so that's great, but I think that's the reason why it wasn't a super high performer. Last but not least, we have Felicity Fleming with Honey, You're Home Early. A cuckold husband walks in on an interracial three-way. Once again, it's the niche erotica, the super specialized niche erotica that does less well than other books in Freebie Friday. And I said before, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it's a criticism on Felicity or Simone. I think it's just the fact that, you know, people download these books if they're into that niche. If they're not, then they're less likely to. Whereas with a romance book, that reaches a more general audience. So there we go. How did this book do? This book was 38% fewer clicks than the average. So it's interesting. I really like the cover to this one. I mean, that girl is beautiful. The tousle black hair and stuff like that. You've got the two handsome black dudes back there. You know exactly what is going down with this book. So I don't know. One of these books, it might not do as well in comparison to the Guru Manchester bad boy romance books. But I think you'll find if you write a Guru Manchester bad boy romance book, it will do really well for maybe a month and then kind of drop off the face of the earth. A book like this, Honey, You're Home Early, I think will probably continue selling reasonably well for months and months before it gets eclipsed by something else. So that's it. That is the information that I gleaned. I know I asked everyone who took part in Freebie Friday whether I could talk about their books or not. So I hope I didn't disappoint anyone by not talking about their book. Just thought there's a lot of information to go through. I definitely found a lot that I could take away from there that was useful. And hopefully you did too. I'm excited to see what we have for Freebie Friday next week, and I'll keep you updated. In the meantime, as you know, this is Ginger from Exclusive ARC. Go to exclusivearc.com to find out more, or email me at editor@exclusivearc.com. I work with authors to try and get them reviews. So I send out an advanced reading copy of their books to my 8,200 plus subscribers, and we can normally net them a good number, potentially dozens of reviews for their book as soon as it launches. That's it. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble on, and I hope this was useful to you. And who knows, maybe I will do another report fairly soon. Cheerio.